I recently played through Persona 3 Reload and wondered to myself, what makes the Persona art style so good? What techniques does the team behind the series use to make every game in the series feel so unique? In this video, I want to look at everything the series has to offer and dissect the formula that makes it so great. It might sound weird to you, but honestly, the first thing that I noticed when I played the game was how much attention they put into every little detail. Things like the lines, shapes, colors, value, face, texture, and typography. Wait a second, these are all part of the elements of design. Something that the team does really well is that they have a clear design philosophy based on their knowledge of the elements of design. You can see it clearly with many of the illustrations that are in the game. A lot of them feel like they come straight out of a magazine or a product. To begin with, let's start by examining some character art first. To me, the first things that come to mind are the lines, values, and colors. If we look closely, we can notice patterns in the way that line weight is applied. In areas where shadows would be darker, we can see that more weight is applied to the line art. Under the major clothing folds, under the chin, etc. This technique is used to apply emphasis on the shadows and to give more detail to the parts that are drawn. It might seem like something small, but the difference that it can make a big impact on your art. Line weight also applies to how thin a line can be too. We can see it with the hair strands from the character's hair. It is thicker when it's closer to the head and thins out the farther away it is from the character. This isn't the only way line weight is used in artworks. In some illustrations, you can even find that there aren't any lines at all. This brings us to the next topic, which is shapes. Instead of lines, they use shapes to convey objects and ideas. In this image, you can see it being used to define the shape of the ribbon and other accessories of the character. If you look closely at some of the illustrations, you can see that this is being used everywhere. For example, in this piece, I would say that the majority of the artwork is not lined at all. When you block out the shapes this way, there is not as much detail. You might be wondering, why would you want less detail in an artwork? Isn't the point to make everything as detailed as it can be? My answer to that is that it depends. The advantage of having it less detailed is that you can add more detail to other areas. Areas where you would rather have the focal point, such as the face. Blocking out shapes this way can be quickly done with a lasso fill tool too, which can help speed up your process a lot. Instead of having to line every part of an illustration, we can speed up the process by blocking in the shapes of what we want and render in the details later. Next up is values. If we pay attention to the values, we can see that they are split into 3 tones: black, white, and gray. Splitting it up this way increases the contrast of the illustration and separates the illustration between the different shapes. The contrast of the image is used to naturally guide your eyes to the focal areas. It is almost like a process that your eyes go through when you look at this type of illustration. You will notice the dark areas first, the area contrasting the light background, and then your eyes will be drawn to the light areas. If all of the values were the same in this image, it wouldn't have the same effect on you compared to when it is clearly laid out in these 3 components. Now that we've examined that, we can break down other similar artworks with the same concept. We can see that the all-out attacks follow a similar concept, a small range of values and a limited palette with high contrast. From the same illustrations, we can also see another element being used in the artworks: color. Color is used to emphasize the design of the characters. Each of the illustrations take a core color of the character and extend it to the background. Using colors can emphasize the feelings and characteristics of each of the characters. Although we don't normally pay attention to it, colors can have a great effect on the ways we feel. Something dark will look more moody, while something bright will do the opposite. Not only does brightness change the mood, hue will also have an effect on our minds. That's why choosing colors effectively and understanding them properly will give you an edge for your artworks. Face is another element that the game uses well. If you pay attention, you can notice a lot of use of positive and negative space. Illustrations can easily be separated from the background colors and the character art. Even when you convert the positive and negative space in the illustration into 2 separate shapes, you can see the strong silhouette that it creates. Separating the art into positive and negative space can help you see what looks wrong in an image. For example, if something is not as dynamic, we can see it easily just by the negative and positive space. Understanding this can be the key to understanding what makes your poses and characters look plain. If you notice that the silhouette looks off, you can go back and change it to something that looks much more interesting. Having something look interesting is all about having a nice silhouette. Next up is texture. Texture can be used to add more depth and detail to an illustration, but you don't really see much of it in the art of Persona. If you look closely, the textures are mostly smooth and round. You can only start seeing more of the textures when you take a look at the different backgrounds in-game. Textures will vary for the various materials that are in the background. Something shiny like metal will have a smooth finish, while something rugged like the ground will have a rough texture. This will sound obvious to most people, but every material and item has a different texture, so the way that we show these materials must be rendered in a different way. It can be something simple, but they can make a big difference in your art. Even something as simple as a dress shirt will have a completely different texture compared to a blazer uniform. You don't have to learn how to draw every texture out there in the world, but if you understand a couple characteristics, you'll be able to draw most things out there. Let's take a break from the art and take a look at something else that is used in the game: typography. In the game, we can see how typography influences everything in the UI, such as the menus, actions, transitions, and even things such as the loading screen. We see a similar font for all of the UI in the game, but we can also see areas where they will switch up the style. For example, in these illustrations for each of the characters, bolds, italics, and sizes are used to create a graphic style. They change the style to suit each of the characters, and even something as small as changing the font can have a big impact in the things that you are viewing. Making sure to mix up the emphasis on the characters will make things much more interesting to look at. In almost all of the text in-game, you can notice that everything is in all caps too. This makes it easier to read and is done to bring emphasis on all of the text in the game. So, how can we use everything that we learned for our own art? I wanted to make an artwork that applied as much as these techniques as I could into one piece. I began by sketching the main character and tried my best to pay attention to the lines as much as I could. In all honesty, this is an area where I know I could have worked on, but I did try my best. The next thing that I worked on were the values. I do this by separating the light and dark areas. Doing the lighting early makes it easier for me to put colors in later. If you struggle with lighting, I would suggest trying to do the values first. It might help you have a better understanding of the lighting. Next up is adding colors. This part is pretty easy as I just pick the colors from the design and adjust them to my liking. For me, just getting down all of the base colors is enough. As I continue rendering, I will continue to adjust them anyway, so it doesn't really matter what they look like at the beginning. Then, I start rendering until I get to an area where I'm satisfied. Next up, I start working on the composition and shape of the illustration. I use the lasso fill tool to fill in the shapes on this piece, because doing it this way speeds up my process a lot. At this point, I try my best to pay attention to the shapes in the illustration and adjust them to how I want them to look, making sure that the positive and negative space in the illustration are good. I wanted to try adding some typography into the illustration too, so I took some ideas from the game and added them into my own piece. Finally is texture. For texture, I applied an overlay layer with brush strokes and applied it to the entire background and some other areas too. Overall, I was pretty happy with how this one turned out, especially because I wasn't used to drawing guys as much. I hope this video helped you understand how the Persona series is able to have such a characteristic look, and I hope you are able to use some of the things that I talked about in the video for your own pieces. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you again in another video. Bye bye, bye bye, bye bye.